Hi everybody, you're listening to the Khandaan podcast by the You Podcast team, a bi-weekly podcast revisiting the movies of Amir Khan, Salman Khan and Shah Rukh Khan.
Every show we pick a random year from 3 decades of collectively 300 films the Khans have done and let our listeners vote which movie we should talk about. So it's entirely up to you.
Pick a team, make a vote, take us down nostalgia lane, punish us, or make us reassess a movie we dismissed.
We love the Khans, most of us, sometimes. And we would love for you all to be part of our Khandaan, because when it comes to the Khans in Bollywood, nothing else really matters.
Welcome to episode 94 of the Khandaan podcast. We are here, we are back, we are discussing Hum Dil De Chuke with Sal from Sal and the Bad Pun. Sal, we finally have you on the Khandaan podcast for a full episode now. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored and excited.
I'm really excited to talk about this movie with you. Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam is a weird one, right? Like, for me, this is the last Sanjay Leela Bhansali movie I loved because I like Black. I even like Sawariya to a certain degree. I do not like the last 2-3 he's done with the Ranveer and Deepika. I don't like them. So this was the one I loved. And I have honestly not watched it in ages since then. Like we discussed on the last episode, you are in a way talking to your old self that loved this movie. And you're like, wait a minute, dude. And it also reflects back to the conversation we were having about the Aishwarya Salman relationship, which again, this movie is kind of a kickoff point too. So, Sal, let's start with you. What do you think about Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam? Like, is this a movie you revisit often? Have you watched it since it came out? Like, where do you kind of place this?
So, I have very distinct memories of watching Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam when it first came out. And this was the era when, like, a TV promo would set the tone for the entire movie, like, you know, whether you were excited for it, whether you were going to wait for it to come out on videotape, or whether you were going to go into the theaters to watch it. And like literal video spots, like literal TV spots would, I think, make stars. And the first TV spot for Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam was Aishwarya Rai spinning in the Nimbura song, in the blue lenga. Yeah, the top shot. So it's like shot overhead and she's spinning and it's in slow motion, and that was it. And it was immediately like you knew this was going to be something big, you know? Like this was going to be like a star-making role for her, and this was going to be a big film. And I was one of the people who enjoyed the film, but was not in love with it when it first came out for a lot of different reasons. And I was a child when it first came out, but I was already kind of a snob. So I had very clear ideas on why I liked it, why I didn't like it. And his Sanjay Leela Bhansali's next film, Devdas, I consider to be an almost perfect film. You know, like a film that does exactly what it wants to do, and shows us a creator at the height of his powers. But I think there are two camps of people, where one camp is like, Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam is the most watchable of Bhansali movies because it has so much air, it's more naturalistic, etc. And then there's the other camp that says that like Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam is the last of Sanjay Leela Bhansali, like having to deal with like producer pressures and this and that before he started making movies exactly like how he wanted to make them. And his movies have gotten better with the, you know, complete creative freedom. And I am in the latter camp, where I think Devdas is probably his strongest movie. I always have like my Sanjay Leela Bhansali rankings ready, but Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam for me, I'm in the minority where it's probably more in the middle rather than towards the top of the Bhansali films for me, like in terms of ranking.
What's the rest of your ranking? Now I want to, because the ranking is ready. Like, how do you rate them? What is your like top?
I think Devdas is unequivocally his best film. So it's Devdas, Bajirao Mastani second, which I think is very, 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 very strong. Ramleela third, Saurya fourth. I recently rewatched Guzarish and didn't dislike it as much as the first time I watched it, but I really, really dislike Black. So that's probably towards the bottom for me. So Black, Padmavat, which I also really disliked because it had two completely leaden, inert lead performances, aside from Ranveer. So Black, Padmavat, and Khamoshi are towards the bottom for me, which is funny because Black and Khamoshi are probably more beloved amongst general audiences, like more normie audiences, people who don't like obsessively rewatch Sanjay Leela Bhansali's films. So I think I'm like my order is probably a little bit flipped in that sense.
See, this is why we're friends, Sal, because I agree with almost all of that. Especially with your lowest rankings. Like, those are like my least favorite Bhansali movies as well. I would quibble with like Bajirao Mastani being that high up the list, but that's for like other reasons. And this is not a show about Bajirao Mastani, but you know.
So, Amrita, what about you? How was it? How do you kind of rate Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam?
So on a nostalgia rating, like this is very high because when it came out, like Sal says, like I remember just what a sensation it was. Like everybody was freaking obsessed with it, you know, like this was also the time when people would, like part of movie mania in India at the time was that when a hit movie came out and it had like gorgeous costumes, and that was every Bhansali movie, then it also reflected in what was available in the market. So like you would have the same like costume jewelry that was modeled on whatever was being portrayed on screen. So like Devdas and Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam were like really huge in that regard. And then that style of like saris and lehengas and stuff. And I was in school at the time, like when this movie came out, but I remember like, you know, like all the girls, and I wasn't a very girly girl, but I remember like all my girlfriends were like super into that kind of costume jewelry. And I can't wear costume jewelry because I am allergic, but I remember feeling like really left out and feeling like really envious that I couldn't wear like those giant jhumkis and everything. So it was like a huge style sensation, like Aishwarya. To my mind, this is one of Aishwarya's strongest performances. Like she is, like this was like the first time that she was in a film and she wasn't presented as a model. You know, like I feel like in everything, including Iruvar, there's just a stiff quality to her up until like this film in which like she was just Nandini, you know, like she's that slightly over the top kind of character that Bhansali loves, but she really does well in that. And yeah, like I have like very fond memories of this film.
I like 1999 Sujoy. I was obsessed with Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam because obviously Aishwarya Rai. But like going back yesterday, I fell in awe like how great Sanjay Leela Bhansali was when he's not let loose, you know, within those restrictions. He does a much better job than I enjoy watching this versus Devdas. Or all the later works that he has done. So I'm totally in the other camp of where Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam falls in the Bhansali filmography. I really enjoyed watching Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam because the story itself is very, you know, old as hills. Bollywood has done this over and over again, be it in Wo Saat Din or we've seen it in many other plays, and this is inspired by a Gujarati play. That's what Bhansali himself quotes. But this is, you know, done over again, Sanskriti over love and all of that. But the way it's structured and all of that, when I look back at it now from 2021 Sujoy's eyes. It's so good to see a filmmaker at the peak of his craft trying to craft these scenes that tell such a coherent tale with characters that we love, with characters that we want to root for, and all of those are come together so beautifully, and that's why I think Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam sort of stands the test of time. I think it's an immensely rewatchable movie.
Let's talk about just a little bit about Sanjay Leela Bhansali as a director, I think, right? I mean, for me, rewatching this movie and Khamoshi, and I think I mentioned this on the Khamoshi podcast, 80% of the joy is knowing how much SLB was annoyed by Salman Khan. Watching the movie, that just brings me joy when I watch this movie, that he probably couldn't stand working with Salman Khan, but he had no choice. And clearly, even in Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, now the stories from, Ghumar and Ranveer and all of these, like how much of a taskmaster he's become. It always reminds me of that sequence in I Hate Love Stories where Neelam's husband is like, "Mujhe sirf 3 baal chahiye mathe pe," that kind of thing. That just always reminds me of Sanjay Leela Bhansali. And watching this, I just realized I feel about Sanjay Leela Bhansali about how now a lot of people think about Christopher Nolan, where his movies are pretty but cold. They're too long. Somebody needs to rein him in. And the more success he's gotten, the more unhinged he's become as a filmmaker. And he usually has confusing and bad endings. So I think there's a clear analogy to be made between these two film directors. And also watching Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, it made me realize why Sanjay Leela Bhansali has not made a DDLJ, he's not made a Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, or even a K3G or anything like that. A movie that really kind of hits at like a kind of the soul of a people. He always feels like artificial and it doesn't connect. So I would say probably his last few movies have been quite successful financially, but I don't know if they're like I found Padmavat to be terrible to watch and extremely Islamophobic, for example. Like I could not enjoy that movie at all. So
here's the argument that I have regarding the soul argument that you have. Right, his movies feel inert in a way. It's because he is such a taskmaster, and B, what you would phrase as perfectionist. So he wants control on set. That's why. Post Devdas, all the movies has done is mostly on stage, on a sound stage, so he can have a control over how the film looks, how everything looks sterile, from Savaria to Black. Then you move over to all the bigger canvas movies that he's done over, and that's why it just lacks that authenticity. The ugliness is not at all there in any frame that Sanjay Leela Bhansali presents, and that's become his look, and that's why it becomes more like a music video, and that's where we lose that connect. It becomes.
I think what Amrita was saying about that heightened performance of Aishwarya, right? Mm-hmm. I think Sanjay Leela Bhansali, like Christopher Nolan, has kind of a sketching of a character, but he doesn't really ever write like a real person. Like none of these people feel real to me. They feel like ideas and muses and fancies. And that's why I personally have a problem with connecting with these movies. And when I was looking at the credits for Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, you have like Vikram Aditya Motwani is an AD on this movie. Mm-hmm. Music was made by Ismail Darbar. Cinematography Anil Mehta. Like he has a team around him. Now watch one with Sanjay Leela Bhansali. It's like The Room with Tommy Wiseau, where he's the producer, he's the writer, he's the cinemator, he's the composer. He's gonna do everything himself, and maybe it's too much. I don't know. What do you guys think about that thesis of mine?
Yeah, so I've basically thought about this a lot. Khamoshi and Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam are probably, other than, Ram Leela, which sort of went back a little bit to the bodiness, the looseness, and the airiness of Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, and also went back to Gujarat. I think those two films have a lot of air and sunshine, right? And I think that's one of the reasons people respond to them. But for me, that kind of obsessive cavernous yet claustrophobic control of something like Devdas or Savarya, or even in Bajirao Mastani, where everything is plotted like almost like, one of those battlefield scenes, but still there's like a weirdness to those films that I really respond to. The perfection and the perfectionism of them, which leaves a lot of people cold, actually like fascinates me, because there's such a darkness to them. It reminds me of watching, like MGM musicals, right? Where on one hand, they're like sunlit and you have these beautiful kind of sets and, hand painted backdrops and things like that. But at the same time, everything in those movies is like, there's like a schema to it. There's a level of perfectionism and just people are performing at a heightened level of like getting everything right. So for me, there's something in those movies, like a weirdness. I don't even know, like a junoon in the filmmaking that I like really, really respond to. Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, you see that starting to come, especially in the first half, when he's in on Nitin Desai's sets, so he has a little bit more control, even with the sunshine and air, which makes the film so visually appealing. And it's some of Anil Mehta's best work also, because you can tell that he enjoyed working with a director who had a clear creative vision. But I think there's still that kind of like, he knows what to do and he's in control, because it's Gujarat. He knows the people, he knows the milieu. And that half for me is very satisfying to watch. What is tricky for me, with, something like, Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam and Khamoshi, and even Devdas to an extent, and then with his later films, is in his earlier films, he hadn't found the right hero for the Bhansali language, like the Bhansali cinematic grammar. And in these later films, he hasn't found the right heroine. So in the earlier films, he had Aishwarya, who was the perfect Bhansali heroine. She's like almost like the swan. She's something that stepped out of like a mural. Almost, the murals that he uses in the title credits of Devdas, where she's very studied. She's like, she's almost a ballet dancer moving through this world. And as Asim pointed out, these are not people. They're types. They're ideas. They are Bhansali in conversation with himself about, the Krishna Radha motif, that love story, which he's obsessed with. And all of his films are basically about that. So she's the perfect representation of that. And, in these later films, he has the perfect hero, who's Ranveer Singh, who combines that kind of like the, Jununiyat that he loves in his heroes, but with technical craft, which Salman didn't necessarily have. So
how dare you, Sal? How dare you?
I'm going to get into this like properly in a little bit, but I do think if Sanjay Leela Bhansali could make a movie where Aishwarya was the heroine and Ranveer Singh was the hero, he'd have the perfect cast.
Yeah, I agree. I always think of his movies as dreamscapes rather than anything else, because there's a hermetic quality to everything that he does that I think sort of reached its zenith in Savarya, where he just got everything just down into one sound stage, and then he did everything in there. And then I think he exercised that out of his consciousness, and then he sort of slowly started moving back into incorporating bits of the, as you said, air and sunshine back into his film. But it is, I don't know, he's a man so driven by his vision that he almost suffocates his story for its sake. So I can see, every time that he does these, even in his biggest failures, if you're seeing something like Padmavat, and I personally think of Bajirao Mastani as one of his failures, because I don't think it delivered on its premise, honestly. But then you see the way that he's shot that film, and you see the images that he is using to tell that story. And I can see where he was going, what he was going for, and what he intended, because the visuals are so strong. And I think of all the directors that are working anywhere in the world, this is not Bollywood specific, but honestly, like, Bhansali is probably like top 3 in terms of visuals. Like, he has such a strong sense of like how he wants everything to look. But the thing is, his sense is so strong that it strangles everything else. He's incapable of letting anything organic flow from his very tight, controlled idea of like translating the pictures in his head onto film. And I think in Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, just to like bring it back to our main point of discussion today, like, it's just beginning, like his mania is just beginning to manifest. So
this is the first Sanjay Leela Bhansali real movie, right? Like the one you can see the basis for Padmavat, Bajrangi Bajirao Mastani in this already. But I agree with you. But also when you were talking, it reminded me also that he has control of every frame. But if you take the comparison Nolan out, but think about David Fincher, for example, right? He also has a meticulous control over every frame of the movie. But David Fincher seems to be a more complete kind of filmmaker, where Sanjay Leela Bhansali is just obsessed about the things that he's obsessed about. And that for me always seems to hamper my enjoyment, that they are really about him more than anybody else. And I see what Sal is saying about being fascinated with that obsession, but I don't know, fascination ends after a couple of movies. We've seen now, so many of these, especially for me, these last 3 with Ranveer and Deepika, they just seem so samey to me. If you just show me shot by shot,
they kind of fuse into each other for me.
Yeah.
And also the argument that you were also stating, right? These are written, produced, directed, and music composed by him. So all of those, I don't know. There is that argument that when you compose a music of a movie, you give that sort of creative energy into that portion of the movie, and that possibly takes away some of the creative energy from the direction part of it. And that's why I feel when I compare with Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, when all of his creative energy is just focused on creating scenes and how that flows into creating this movie, versus a movie where Padmavat, where he is doing everything, that has to sort of affect the movie.
I just don't think he's a good composer. Like, I don't think he makes good music compared to Ismail Darbar does. Like, I'll be honest, like, I've hated all of his soundtracks since then. Like, maybe there's one song that's fine, but take away the visuals. Are you really listening to those songs? I don't think you are.
Like, I do like some of the songs, but again, when I compare Ismail Darbar in Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam or Devdas, it's definitely no comparison.
Yeah.
Wait, so you guys don't like the Ram Leela soundtrack?
I do. But again, Tatar Tatar versus Aankhon Ki Gustakhi or Chand Chupa or Dholi Taro is...
Yeah, but what about Lal Ishq versus those songs with Diwani Mastani? Come on.
I don't like Lal Ishq. I do like
Lal Ishq, but then you have Tadap Tadap here,
Yeah.
Okay, Tadap Tadap is unfair. Like that kills the competition everywhere. Like that's
every time, yeah. Yeah. See, apparently they worked on this. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Awesome.
No, I talk all the time. Please, Sal. You talk.
No, I was going to say I'm actually a fan of Bhansali, the composer. I think there's some gorgeous songs in Guzarish. There's one that Harshdeep Kaur sings called Saiba, I think, which is a lullaby, and it's beautiful. And I think there's some lovely songs in his films. But I do agree with Asim's thesis that he doesn't have anyone challenging him anymore. Like there's, like I feel like with Darbar especially, there were lots of reports of them clashing over the music of Devdas. And Devdas's music is just toweringly beautiful. Like that soundtrack is just, I mean, Wo Chand Jaisi Ladki is like as compelling as anything, that came out in the 50s, for instance. That is a beautiful song. But I think creative clashes, especially for someone who's as, hermetically controlled as Bhansali, are useful. So I would really like for Bhansali to work with like a top-notch composer like Rahman, and to have someone like Gulzar come in and write the lyrics, where, he hasn't had a great lyricist on any of his films. I think Mehboob did the lyrics on Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, but he's never had like a Javed Akhtar or a Gulzar, or even like, contemporarily, an Amitabh Bhattacharya or like an Irshad Kamil come and do the lyrics. It's always been sort of people that he can marshal to his, bully really to his point of view. And I think you really see that in some of the performances also. Like, for instance, like, my problem with a lot of the recent films, I think Bajirao, of course, I really, really like. Ramleela, I love. But Padmavat, I don't care for. I think is that performers who can't hold their own when he's just browbeating them, right? Deepika being a very good example, where she's perfectly great in these like human-sized roles, like in Piku, but in a space like that where you're thrown into playing this archetype, you're playing femininity incarnate, I think you have to be sort of a persona outside of just being an actor. And we were talking about how Aishwarya, before Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, was presented as a model, and I think one of the reasons is Aishwarya was already one of the most famous Indian people in the world by that point, People already knew Aishwarya Rai. People knew Sanju from the Pepsi commercial. People knew Miss World. People knew this face, those eyes, the iBank commercial. Like everyone knew her. And I think Sanjay Leela Bhansali figured out how to take that persona, like this, the most famous pair of eyes in India, and get a performance, get a story out of her. Like, he knew exactly the kind of persona that should play a persona. And I think that's one of the reasons why Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam is so successful where it is successful, because it's a story that's often been told. It's a real life story. There's a Bengali author who wrote about her experiences. There's a Hugh Grant movie that we talked about in our Binging Bridgerton podcast conversation, My Bengali Nights, I think it's called, which is the same story again. But I think in this film, the iconography surrounding the central female character is so fully realized. I remember, Sujoy, you tweeted about Man Mohini, the introduction song.
Yeah.
And it is it's a work of art. It's a marvel. Like, I look at it, each choice, like her, shooting in the desert, and the way it's shot, you can tell it's, when he was making it, he was like, this is going to make this girl a star. That's how it's shot. And that's what happened. And it's so satisfying to watch that kind of iconography happen in real time, in a sense.
I think also he needs somebody to push back on him, And I think I understand what you were saying about Ranveer being the perfect hero for him. I don't agree, because I feel Sanjay Leela Bhansali is, at the end, he's not really interested in his heroes. He's only interested in his heroines. And basically, Ranveer just does whatever Sanjay Leela Bhansali wants him to do. And I think that's the mistake. If you just let an obsessive person just do whatever they want, the result is not there. You need somebody to push back. You need Salman to add that massiness to it to make it a bit more acceptable. I think even Aishwarya probably pushed back to SLB, maybe more so in Devdas. I don't think he could push around Priyanka Chopra, and I don't think he can push around Madhuri. They all accept that he's a great talent, but they don't get pushed around by him, where I feel Ranveer is just, he just does whatever to be loved, like in general anyway. That's his persona. So he's just going to do whatever. And then, Deepika is Deepika, she doesn't seem like a real person anyway. So you can just make her she's like an android, right? So she can deliver perfection to you, right? So I do think that's why things are missing. And I have not connected. But I want to kind of move away from this discussion, because we're going to get back to it. I think the other thing rewatching Hum Dil De Chuke also reminded me is how much of a hangover this has of the Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, DDLJ family hangover. Like how much family elements are in this movie, which all of the future movies do not have that much. This has a lot of family on both sides, before the marriage and after the marriage. And how much I hate this family. I cannot stand the family, and I cannot stand the family dynamics at all whatsoever. The pitch is so high, they're so loud, and I know that that's supposed to be what they're trying to do, but this aesthetic has basically been taken over now by TV, like
TV
this
serials,
kind of
Yeah.
and that's why I hate SLB for a certain way, because this has created so many shit TV, because this high-pitched family, why are they constantly just knocking on the door, right? Like, let people, bang. Like, let Vanraj bang. Let him give him a shot, man. Like,
At
sister
4
is
a.m. in the
banging on
morning.
the door. Yeah, 4 o'clock, bichara, like, waiting for 6 hours. Nothing happening. Yeah, I can't stand the family.
This is Gujarat 101, that, Bhansali has to build this whole universe that everybody knows how to garba and all the ceremonies and everything else. And also, this is an intro to the world of where Bhansali will lead his cinematic universe to. So when you were talking that the pitch in this movie is loud, I watched Devdas a week before, just bits of it, and I absolutely hated it. Like the beginning, the beginning scene where we get introduced to the Haveli of where Devdas's parents live, and the mother of Devdas gets the letter. It's a whole sweeping shot of Smita, what's her name, who also plays
Jaikar, yeah,
Smita Jaikar, who also plays the mother of Nandini here. The pitch in that movie, man, Devdas, oh my god, it's crazy loud, and compared to that, this is like an art house movie.
I agree, and I think the other thing I want to point out is that Bhansali is very, very influenced by Gujarati theatre, and I think the pitch for these movies, like Devdas and Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam specifically, because the movies after this do get quieter. Ram Leela is fairly loud, but it's again set in that same Gujarati milieu. I think that Gujarati theatre tonality is similar to that. You have the wisecracking character, the manservant who says those funny things, and he uses a lot of actors from Gujarati theatre in this film. And in Devdas, I remember we went to watch it. I love Devdas, unlike Sujoy, but I remember when we were watching it in the theatre, Smita Jaikar comes in and she's like a full gale force. She's running through this, Haveli, and I remember my mother going, "Amra irukum naki," are we like
exactly,
this? Because I think Bengalis take a good deal of pride about, not being very loud, or they, there's a little bit of snobbery around, being very, very loud. And, my mother was scandalized. She was like, this is an unacceptable presentation of Bengali culture. This did not happen in Sharad Chandra, all this screaming and running around and all of that, So I totally get where you're coming from, but I also see where that tonality comes from, and, putting it in sequence with Hum Aapke Hain Kaun and Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge really helps, because this is probably Bhansali's happiest movie in terms of just for a long time, nothing bad happens to people, while Devdas onwards, the doom and gloom starts pretty early. Yeah. While here you have the scheming aunt and all of that, but for about 2 hours of the runtime, they're just hanging out, flying kites, making out in front of grandmothers, farting, all of that,
I do love Pakhrat Chachi though. She's like, the first moment he comes in and सबको रुलाते जाएगा ये परदेसी, like straight away it's like
Foreshadow.
ये Pakhrat करेगी. She had that pitch of, remember in Andaz Apna Apna where Ravina comes to the airport and you have that reporter guy like एक ढूंढो 1000 मिलेंगे madam. It's the same pitch of dialogue delivery.
And then we have Bhai saying, "Mera kamra kidhar hai?"
No, Gamchu, upset you. I laughed so hard. Because Sanjay Leela Bhansali did not write those words. It's not possible. That is Salman. But we have to talk about that meet cute, because there the magic of SLB starts, I feel. That's the first moment I was like, whew. Because this is another theme with SLB movies, right? Like the energy of women wanting to bang is very high, right? Like so high, like disconcertingly high, because you don't see it that much in Bollywood movies, right? It's always subdued. Whereas in Sanjay Leela Bhansali's, it's like high, and you're like, wow, this is like shit is on straight away. Like, like holding the thing, and then Aishwarya's eyes and Salman looking pretty. It all works together, and you know that these guys got together then too, which obviously ended quite tragically, but this was the good time. This was the things that everything was kind of working out. Amrita, what did you think of that first Jhumar scene where they meet cute?
I mean, that was actually like, because I remember that scene so well, because it was the first time that I saw Aishwarya as an actress. Like, that is what I really remember from this film. Because she has a pitch to her voice, and she looks at him, like, while they're like going around that Jhumar. It is completely different from anything that I'd seen from Aishwarya before. And she's done sultry before, like, in Iruvar and stuff. And I'd seen her in that. And she'd done, like, rom-coms before. And, but
are we talking about jeans?
Oh, God. Remind me. But, like, this was the first time that I'd seen her, like, in it. Like, it's funny because, like, there was Aishwarya and Salman in that scene, and then there was Deepika and Ranveer in Ram Leela in, like, what is it, that Lahu song?
Lahu Mu Lag Gaya.
Lahu Mu Lag Gaya. Like, where you can literally see the sparks fly between, like, two people, and you're like, yeah, that's not acting. Like, that is real right there, Like, you can just see the fascination that these two people have for each other, and it is real in a way that just goes past, like, filmmaking. So yeah, I remember that scene very well. But going back to, like, what Asim was saying about how the sexual desire of the female characters in a Bhansali film, I think that is something that I don't think I ever thought about it in those terms, but as I was listening to him speak, I was like, oh yeah, that is true, because he does show, like, him and Mani Ratnam, I think, are like the two directors that I think of, like Indian directors that I think of when I think about sexual desire being portrayed on screen, and they portray it in very different ways. So for Bhansali, I think there is a, like, what Sal was saying about the Krishna Radha theme. So it's a sexual desire that is never completely fulfilled. Like, it's not fulfilled in Devdas, it's not fulfilled in Ram Leela, it is not fulfilled in Zarish. In all these things, like, the woman is, like, very upfront about the fact that she finds this man incredibly desirable and that she has wants and desires. But the way Bhansali manages to pull that off, but also still stay within the confines of conservative Indian filmmaking, it's just masterful. And it's not something that I admire necessarily, because I feel like, let the women, let the women have what they want, at least, like, once in a while. But I also feel like in this film, like, Nandini And like there's a theme running through it, right? Like with her sister and with her herself, like, you know, when she's having on a Suhag Raat, when Raj is putting the moves on her, and she's just like, you know, like, what do you think you're doing? Like, I've hardly had a conversation with you, and then here you are. And then when Raj is just like, how dare you? Like, you know, you're treating me like a rapist. Like, how dare you? And, but it's also like a commentary on the, expectations and the realities of arranged marriage. Like, I've always wondered how that works, you know, and I'm saying this as somebody whose parents did have an arranged marriage, but I'm just like, you know, like, how does that work? Like, you see each other like twice before you get married, and then all of a sudden you're just having sex. Like, how does that even work? Like, what are the mechanics of this thing?
There's
but
two
also,
other.
like,
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to add two things that I also noticed about, again, female sexuality. When Anu comes back from her husband's house, right, from her married home, the one thing that she says, "Ke ek raat bhi main is aadmi ke bistar pe nahi soungi," you know, like,
yeah,
it's clearly about sexuality. And the second time is when Ajay Devgan is talking with his dad. He also specifically mentions the jism of a woman, and it just like. It is like points that are throughout the movie about sexuality of women that is explicitly in the movie, which I don't think any other filmmaker would have mentioned in that way. It is about jism, it's about being a lash, it's about, you know, desire, love, and all these kind of things, and coming from, you know, a female perspective. So, no, sorry, I cut you off, but I thought it added context to what you were saying.
But also, at the same point, when we are talking about sex, we also are told twice that Nandini has had no sex education at all, and she believes that bachche can be had just by kissing, you know?
Yeah.
Which is also very true to the milieu and to the film, because this is precisely the kind of family in which there will be no sexual education. Like, I'm not even sure if Nandini went to school. Like, maybe she just learned music with her dad, and that was her education. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
That was one note I had, like, both of these characters are kids, like, especially Aishwarya, but both are like, I was like 19 when this movie came out, maybe 20. Like, I was clearly a kid. Like, I was like at that, you know, obsessive love, Kabir Singh, Devdas kind of phase. And these guys are also in that phase. So I'd written like, these are kids falling in love in an obsessive way. And just something that... Sal, sorry, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, like, I think I just remember that I was like single digit age when the film came out, and Aishwarya's character and I probably knew the same amount about sex.
Sal is making us feel old.
But I think Asim was going to talk about Aishwarya as an actress, you know, and this is like something that I've talked about a good deal, and I write about a good deal, because she's someone whose acting doesn't get talked about a great deal, because again, you know, there's the iconography of what Aishwarya Rai Bachchan means, and no one really gets into the technicality of what kind of performer she is, but honestly, like, those two things are so in conversation with each other, in a way that we acknowledge for male stars like Shah Rukh or Salman, but not as much for female stars. And I think with Aishwarya, if you don't acknowledge what her public persona and her, you know, what people see when they look at her is how that's in conversation with her performances. If you don't acknowledge that, you're not really getting a full picture of who she is as an actress. And I think Sanjay, Leela, Bhansali and Mani Ratnam were the first people to have figured that out, to have cracked that, you know, that these two things are in conversation with each other. Like with Aishwarya, right? Like, she probably doesn't have like the pure acting horsepower that a Madhuri or a Rani does, you know, where it's not like she's not a robust actress, but she's a very singular sort of star, you know. She doesn't have that kind of like full throat acting that we really admire, you know, as Bollywood watchers, the kind of acting that Nutan and Nargis set a precedent for. But she reminds me more of like someone like a Wahida Rahman or like a Carol Lombard or someone like that, because her skills are like dancerly grace and this discipline of movement and discipline of presence and this complete stillness on screen, which allows you to really project onto her and onto the text of the film, where maybe she's not giving you that dhamakedar wala performance, but when in her best roles, when she's cast just right, like as Nandini or Joda or Sophia, you can't imagine anyone else in that role because she's such a star. She's irreplaceable. And I think that's what star actors are, as opposed to good actors who are very, very good, but they're good. They disappear into the roles. While star actors, their star persona is in conversation with their performances. And I think Aishwarya at her best, she's that kind of star where you're always in dialogue with what she means within the larger culture when you're watching one of her performances. And I think Nandini in Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam really, really started that off. Like Manmohini is literally a song about this woman is so bewitching that you're going to fall in love with her when you look at her, but you're never going to get her. She's like out of your reach. She's unreachable. And that's like Aishwarya's that's the whole idea, right? Like the ice princess, the unreachable. I think the film does a really good job of setting that tone while also warming her up for a Desi audience who wants that full-bloodedness in its performances and in its women.
I'm really happy you're on, Sal, because I want somebody to explain Aishwarya to me. And I think what you just explained to me, I get it now a little bit, because I just feel uncomfortable watching Aishwarya on screen, always. Like, even more so in interviews, because you were talking about public persona. I hate watching that David Letterman interview she does. You know which one I'm talking about, right? Like, in India we do this and we live with our parents. I just feel like this attention constantly that I have on screen when watching her, and the only time that tension relaxes is when she's in a song, where she can express through her body or her dancing, and the other funnily, the scene she has with her dad where she's completely still and she just has to emote with her eyes, where he's scolding her that the room is not ready. That part I like. Or when she goes completely emotionally discharging in a way, in where she breaks down with Salman in the library, or when she's having that confession scene with her mom, where they're also talking over each other, and she's like, "Yahan chua hai, meri rooh ko chua hai." Those were the scenes that I'd forgotten that Aishwarya can deliver these scenes, because otherwise I'm just constantly uncomfortable watching her on screen. I don't know what it is, and I don't know where it comes from.
It comes from her. It comes from her because she...
Okay, it's her fault. Glad. I'm so happy it's not me.
No, because she's an incredibly guarded person. And she's an incredibly guarded person because I think she's fundamentally a shy person who is thrust onto a stage and then has had to learn some very harsh lessons in celebrity and in terms of how she is treated. And I don't think she especially enjoys male attention the way that a lot of other people do. And I think it makes her fundamentally uncomfortable. I think that relates to the way that she carries herself in her performances sometimes. And I think it really comes across in the films in which I feel like she has a connection with the director versus films in which, she doesn't really feel at ease, and you can really tell how stiff she is. And therefore, if you see some of her earlier Bollywood work where she's working with directors that presumably somebody's told her that she should be working with them because they're big names and they're successful, but they're, old school Hindi film directors, used to a certain kind of moldable, filmy heroines, and you can see that they probably try to work with her in that sense, and she just sort of retreated. And you can see it in her body language, the way that she sometimes behaves opposite her co-stars. And then I think that's also one of the reasons why this film was such a big departure for her and a jumping off point for her, because she reacted to Salman in a very different way than she did with most of her co-stars up till then. But also she, like Sal said, Sanjay Leela Bhansali is one of the few directors who really got her, and continue to get her in all the movies that she'd made with him. And you can see the effect of that in the way that she carries herself in this film. And she's only gotten progressively more comfortable in his movies, I feel.
I'm kind of going through the filmography of the movies she's been in, and I mean, I have to...
Not a good thing to do.
There's been there's a lot of them that I really liked her in, and movies that we necessarily don't talk about too much. Like, I loved her in Shabd. I loved her in Raincoat. But anytime where she needs to have fun, that's where it goes really, really badly, I feel. Like, I'm just kind of going through the... She's unable to have fun on screen, and that makes me uncomfortable, maybe. I don't know.
See, I'm going to challenge that a little bit, because I'm just going to, I think one of the things that I always responded to Aishwarya about, even as a very young person, is, I think like there was this intuitive understanding for me as a queer trans young person that this is someone who makes cishet men uncomfortable. Like there's a
it all makes sense now.
Yep, I think there's a remove and a reserve to her that challenges the idea that women need to be accessible, and it's always been there, even when she is sexy. If you watch her song like Vanilla or like Hello Mr. Etikachi from Iruva, she's very like blazingly sexy. But what she's also telling you in those moments is that I'm better than you. I'm not something you can have. And I think that made an entire culture very, very uncomfortable after 2 decades of extreme female warmth and accessibility, where the Taming of the Shrew plot was probably the favorite plot of 80s and early 90s movies. Like Anil Kapoor and Jitendra's bread and butter. And Aishwarya was always saying, you can't tame me because, in a different time, you would have been my subject and I would have been your ruler. That's the sort of aura I think she projects. And I think even with her having fun, I think she does have fun on screen, but it seems like she's having fun in her own rarefied universe. And you're not welcome. Like when she dances in Uri, it's not for anyone else, right? As opposed to when Katrina dances in Sheila or Kamli, where it's for like a male consumption. So even when Aishwarya is being sexy, it's not for anyone's consumption. There's almost this idea that she's not mortal in the same way. So like when I think of Aishwarya, like it always helps me to think of her in the line of like stars from a different era. So in a sense, she's like flung out of time and space, where if she were like a heroine in the silent era or in like the 30s and 40s, she would probably have been venerated for her acting skills. And if you look at her filmography, it's surprisingly strong, as Asim mentioned, but she doesn't get credit for that because her acting style in a way is so anachronistic. It's all about the bhava. It's all about like that, like she's a trained Bharatnatyam dancer, and that's the kind of discipline she brings to her acting as well. And I think with Bharatnatyam, when you dance, there's a rigidity to the way you hold yourself. So when people don't respond to her, that's the kind of rigidity, the reserve that they're being alienated by. But someone who does respond to her, like myself, is entranced by that reservedness. And when the dam of that reserve finally breaks, not for you, but for her, it's so beautiful for me to watch, because as someone who's been told that you're a misfit, you're on the margins, it's so entrancing to watch a woman be like, I'm not interested in pandering. I'm better than you. And this, we're having this conversation right now with the Britney documentary that came out, like women who were mistreated in the aughts. And now, we are reevaluating how we treated them. Aishwarya is a big figure in that, right? Because people were brutal to her. They were brutal to her because she came out as a, abuse survivor, because she, made, once she was blacklisted and blackballed in Bollywood, she tried to make a career for herself in Hollywood, and there was the whole tall poppy syndrome with that. So for lots of years, you could not go onto a YouTube video of hers without an entire crap storm of comments that were spam, basically, calling her all sorts of derogatory names, because people were so angry about this woman basically saying, I'm not going to give in. And she was one of the, in the Me Too conversation, she came up again because she said, I've already said what I've, I spoke up then and I'm going to speak up now. And one of the survivors, Flora Saini, credited her, saying that, she backed out, of a fairly, influential producer at the time, Gaurang Doshi's film, because she knew that the man had abused this woman, because she'd been a survivor and she'd spoken openly about it and had been blackballed and blacklisted for it. So I think both the off-screen persona and the on-screen persona are so fascinating to me as a person who is not the primary intended audience of Bollywood films.
See, this is why I love film, and this is why I love listening to what other people are thinking, because it's always so subjective and it's always so fascinating.
I'm also thinking of one of the movies that I really liked her in was Action Replay, and I thought she was the best part in that movie, where she was having a bit more fun, I felt. Do you guys remember Action Replay? It was a terrible movie.
Sadly, yes.
I remember Akshay Kumar's teeth.
Yeah. No, I thought, what was that song where she's wearing a green shalwar kameez, Chan Ka something, I don't know what
Chan Ke Mohalla, it's Chan Ke Mohalla,
Yeah,
and it's beautifully choreographed. There's these gorgeous, long tracking shots. It's actually, I love her performance in that film, actually.
Yeah, no, I'm just kind of going through that filmography and trying to think other... Because a lot of what you mentioned, Sal, it does remind me of the lyrics of Sheila Ki Jawani, to be honest. My mind was going to, you're never going to get me, tere haath kabhi na aani. So then you dropped Katrina in the conversation itself. But I was also thinking, was Sridevi and Meenakshi Shesadri, were they both, which dance were you saying? Bharatnatyam? Is that the one?
Yeah, so Meenakshi was a trained dancer in multiple forms, Odissi, and I think a bunch of other dance forms, and Kathak and Bharatnatyam. Sridevi famously was not a trained dancer. And that's one of the reasons people often say that the difference between Sridevi and Madhuri is a trained Kathak dancer, and that always comes through. So with Sridevi, she did whatever she wanted to, so the comedy came through, in a different way, because she wasn't a trained dancer. She basically picked up from Master G, whatever Master G did, she mimicked.
There's this song, I think Sal posted it, right? The one with Meenakshi and Sridevi in the same frame, and they're both dancing, and it has really strong queer tones to it. But it's fascinating to watch because you can tell Sridevi is an actor first and Meenakshi is a dancer first. Mm-hmm. The way that they're approaching the song, it's very clear. But yeah.
Let's get back to Salman Khan, please.
I was just going to make that same segue. Let's talk a bit about the men. Let's talk about... Samir Rasalini, Raffalini, I don't know. They kind of put him in different names because Salman is playing an Italian. He's playing an Italian in this, people.
Which is Budapest.
Again, we need to see this. I think with Sanjay Leela Bhansali, his movies are... an extension of him to a large degree. And I do think Salman adds more flavor of himself in this than, Ranveer or any other actors did. Even, Ranveer in Savaria, he couldn't, where they were just following the line, towing the line. Here, first of all, he's acting like an American, more than an Italian in any way, shape or form. But he is also... He's unable to say that he loves somebody. He's he doesn't understand cultural norms whatsoever. He's like, within 20 minutes, he lands in the house, he takes off his shirts and starts dancing. And also, why are NRIs always portrayed with Walkmen? Like, always, they have always Walkmen on their head. Like, is this a thing? I need to ask my family in Pakistan. When I come to Pakistan, am I always wearing like Beats headphones on my head? Is that a thing?
I think it's like the 90s equivalent of like the 60s, like giant camera that's looped around your neck to show that you're from Vilayat.
Yeah, he's very Debu from America in this one at the start, like, for sure. Speaking again about SLB and his sexual gaze upon these things, like Salman is again presented in a very sexual way, as Ranveer was in that, Bat Towel song, and then, all the Khijli Khujli songs, and that song that was what was that song in the bathtub, what was that one?
Jab se tere naina. So there's Jab se tere naina, there's Binti Dil, there's Tatar Chatar.
Binti Dil, that's the one. Yeah, Binti Dil, that's the one I was thinking about. What do you guys think about that? Like, what do you think about the Salman sexuality overall? Because I know, Sal, you have thought of.
Yeah, Sanjay was in love with Salman Khan, right? Like, you can tell. So, like, through Khamoshi and Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, like, if you've seen the making of the film and everything, he's in love with Salman Khan. He's like besotted with him, So I think before Sanjay, Leela Bhansali does not always know how to write a compelling leading man, but he knows how to film a leading man. Like, he films his leading men as these objects of desire, like whether it's Ranveer Singh doing the hip thrust and all the bhabis fainting in the balcony in Tatar Tatar, whether it's, Salman in this, like, walking through, all of these, the balconies and verandas, and all these women are swooning because they have never seen, muscles before, because all the other men that they have are fairly schlubby and so on, like in the giant haveli, because everyone is eating the khakras and the fafras and all of those. So it's like a new thing, right? Like the objectification of a man's body was relatively new in Bollywood, and Salman really leaned into it. Just the year before that, he did Oh Jane Jana, which like really started that, like, sabko shirt utarni hai, sabko muscles dikhane hai, and then just after that, just the year after Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam came out, Kaho Na Pyar Hai came out, where Hrithik, trained by Salman in his personal gym, brought the guns out, which sparked off a national bodybuilding craze in India, I believe, for Desi men, and suddenly everyone had to be fit, and dad bods were out. But this was such a pivotal moment in that, like, how male sexuality was presented on screen, and Bhansali commits to that throughout. In all of his films, he's interested in that, because again, I think, like, I don't know if this is some, Bhansali has not publicly spoken about his sexuality and so on, but it's a queer gaze, right? Bhansali's gaze is a queer gaze in these films, and that's one of the ways in which these male characters are shaped, whether it's in Jab Se Tere Naina or whether it's in Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, where he's walking, with that towel on, and exactly what that's supposed to do to an audience that's watching, or for the women who are watching in that Haveli compound.
I think there is a gaze on the body, which is an amazing body, one of the best bodies. I still, like, that body is something I still want to attain at 42 years old. It's amazing. It's great.
This message is approved by Asim Bernie.
It is, because this week I have not worked out at all, and I'm like, next week after seeing Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, I'll be adding more sets to whatever workout I'll be doing. But it's also Salman's eyes, I feel, because you have on the one side, you have Aishwarya's eyes, and the way he shoots Salman's eyes, which Salman's eyes are a thing too, right? Like, people that like Salman, his eyes have always been like a big thing about it. The way he shoots eyes is also very interesting. Sorry, Amrita, you were laughing so hard that it broke my...
I'm just, sometimes, like, I forget what a big fan you are.
Yeah.
I believe Stardust and Cineblitz and all of that used to call Salman's eyes bedroom eyes. Ask him if you ever wanna use the phrase to refer to his eyes in the future.
No. That's why I was mentioning it, because it is something that has been talked about a lot of times. Beside my own personal, fancies and all that. But yeah, and I think then on the flip side, we have Ajay Devgan, right? Which we have not talked about at all at the moment, like the entire movie of it. And we have to get to it because we've been, recording for a while now. It's funny because like, what's it called? What is that seduction technique called where you abuse, you insult a person? Negging, right?
Negging, yeah.
Sanjay Leela Bhansali is negging Ajay Devgan. Tu kala hai, teri shakal achhi nahi hai, tujhe gana nahi aata, hamar tera dil acha hai. That's his literal sister saying that to him, which is hilarious to me. I was like, why did Ajay even, agree to this role? It just made him feel bad afterwards.
लेकिन लड़की तुझे मिलेगी बाद में.
Yeah.
But I think that's what's endearing about him, right? Whether it's a suitable boy or whether it's Wo Saat Din or whether it's Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, that's the thing that eventually wins you over. That this is not Salman looks like a literal Mills and Boon cover, albeit with a slightly receding hairline in the film. And Ajay Devgan is not that matinee idol, but because he's that person who simmers, in the background until you realize his worth as a person. And this was that brief period when we thought Ajay Devgan was a great actor because Zakham came out, I think, in that period, I think in 1998. Yes. Legend of Bhagat Singh came out a few years later. For a brief period, we thought Ajay Devgan was 8, and this was one of the films. And his ability to play that role where he's being negged by the filmmaker and he's being very self-effacing at a time when Herogiri was a big thing. And remember, Ajay came as a hero astride 2 motorcycles and all of that. Yeah. So for him to take that role also signified a commitment to playing the character in a time when Herogiri was at new peaks, with we've already talked about O Jane Jana. Shah Rukh was playing these, the NRI sweetheart. But Ajay played this role where he was literally being told by everyone around him that he's not good enough. And that ultimately, that's what endears you to the character. And I don't know, this is maybe a fun discussion point. When you first watched the movie, did you want Aishwarya to go back to Salman, or did you want her to end up with Ajay? Because for me, it was very clear. I was very happy that she ended up with Ajay.
Yeah, same.
No, because I was Salman at that time. I was Salman.
So there's a clear gender divide here.
I wanted Nandini to go back to Samir because imagine the babies that they would have.
But बच्चों को खिलाएगा कौन? Who's going to feed the babies?
Samir has an upcoming career as a music artist. In Italy, in Budapest, में उसके shows चालू हो रहे हैं, and all of that is going to be amazing.
ओपेरा में गा रहा है वो, और वो कौन सा क्लब, But getting back to Ajay though, it's interesting cinematically. Aishwarya has never been able to get over Ajay Devgan, be it in this movie, be it in Khaki, be it in Raincoat. Every time she ends up being obsessed with Ajay Devgan. I don't know if it's just because they're cinematically they're opposites, in a way, looking. You have the height of beauty, and the other hand, you have, Maidan on the other side. I don't know what it is, but it definitely sets a trend. It's interesting. But yeah, I do think that Sanjay Leela Bhansali played really well with that contrast between Samir and Vanraj. And especially in, like, for example, the Chand Chupa song, right? Where you have their dancing, so, like, all the balcony shots, man, it's like dream sequences. It almost reaches like Om Shanti Om levels, like how pretty everything is. Like Aishwarya with that purple dress and those, what is that even? Like, he has like a parda with like little diamonds on it, and they're dancing.
They had these
it
screens, they had like net screens that were like studded with little sequins.
It's so pretty, and I'm sure it's just to keep the mosquitoes out when you look at the functionality of it. Like,
but also like it's like a maximalist rendering of the thing that the women use during Karwa Chauth to look at the moon, right? Like it's that taken to its like logical sort of visual conclusion.
I also want to like comment, like, pretty much all the songs are between Aishwarya and Salman, right? But it's not interesting in a way that you have all the songs with Salman, because the story between Aishwarya and Salman gets over, and then you need to tell the story between Aishwarya and Vanraj. So Chand Chupa and Dholi Taru are shown as recaps. It's really interesting how that comes back into the picture, because the movie keeps to engage us with all these songs, but they can't be played. Like, you can't have the first 2 hours with songs and the rest of it is just, them trying to find Samir.
I think for me, it's also Sanjay Leela Bhansali is not interested in that part of the movie, and I feel that's where the movie really starts stumbling as soon as the Ajay Devgan track starts, because there's so many unnecessary scenes there. There's the whole 2 drunk scenes in there that are totally not necessary. You have to add Dholi Taro in there because we haven't seen Salman in a long time, and I think he just keeps coming back to the same things. And I think really the issue happens when the second half of this movie starts. But I think let's quickly also like finish off the conversation with just talking about the music and the songs specifically, right? Because that we haven't done yet. Like, the soundtrack is amazing, right? Like, it's probably one of the best soundtracks, at least in Sanjay Leela Bhansali movies, but like, it's top tier soundtrack. Sujoy, man, what were kind of like your favorite songs?
All of it.
All of it?
Yeah, why would I choose from a soundtrack like this? Like,
okay, which song do you fast forward?
None, really.
None?
Yeah, maybe Kai Poche. That's like, but this soundtrack won lots of awards for everybody. Like, Udit Narayan won for Chand Chupa and Kumar Sanu won for Aankhon Ki Gustakiyan. And I'm really sad that Tarap Tarap didn't win anything. But it's such a fascinating soundtrack.
That Tarap Tarap didn't win, like it should have won everything.
I think it was just too advanced. Like, it was too way ahead of its time. Tarap Tarap. Don't you feel like the rest of the songs are still kind of moldable in what we were listening to at that time?
Yeah.
But this is like almost Devdas, like that kind of level. No, not.
It's also like
Dev Deep, not Devdas.
It's also like Tuhire, where there is no structure to the song and there is no strong percussion in the song. It's mostly vocals driven.
Same with the Jhonka Hava Ka. That's another song that is like so good like and so well shot again.
So on this rewatch, like, that's been so every time I rewatch this film, like, I am transfixed by another song, right? Like, it's always like there's one song that somehow fits into my mood in that one. And for this rewatch, it was Jhonka Hava Ka. Like, I haven't been able to get it out of my head.
Sal, what did you think about the music and like the picturization of it?
The music is you know, what can you say about Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam's music that hasn't been said, right? It famously didn't win the Filmfare Award for Best Music that year. Ismail Darbar lost for both of his great albums to A.R. Rahman, that year to Tal and in 2002 to Satya. But this soundtrack, I mean, you know, as you pointed out, like Tadap Tadap made KK a star. Aankhon Ki Gustakiyan was the song, you know, like everyone was recreating it. There were parody videos, all of this stuff. I'm not even a Sanu fan, but he sings the hell out of that song. It's just, it is beautiful stuff. For me, the song that stuck with me for years, is Manmohini one, which is, I think it's Shankar Mahadevan, but I might be wrong, doing the kind of, it's almost like a spoken word piece, but also the title song, which is this beautiful, grand, operatic moment, sort of almost like a prelude to Hamesha Tumko Chaha from Devdas, but just more stripped down even, because I think Devdas is compositionally more complex. But it's so beautiful to listen to, and the pathos in Kavita's voice. And when I watch the song, so I have some trouble watching Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, right? Because it's hard to separate the real from the real. Only 3 years later, the female star of the film came out publicly saying that the male star had physically, verbally, and emotionally abused her while they were dating. This is on public record. So it's hard to watch the film without feeling a little squicked out. But the Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam song is sort of pure for me in that sense, because it's unmarred by any of that. And I can just enjoy it for, the music, the soaring kind of quality to Kavita's voice, those beautiful organza saris that Nita Lulla put Aishwarya in, the very different kind of chemistry that Ajay and Ash have to the chemistry that Salman and Ash had. It's perfect. And it's the one time in the film, I think, that Bhansali has some amount of control over the outdoor location shoot part of the film. Because clearly they had to shoot in Hungary for some mysterious budget reason or permit reason or something. But this is the one part where it somehow works, because there's less words and so on. It's just the songs. It's just her face. It's just his face. And it's just those voices.
I'd like to add, from a picturization point of view, this time around, I saw how, I completely forgot about this, but I noticed this. Albela Sajan is it comes and goes in bits and pieces, right? It starts with Salman getting that music lesson, and by the end of it, you can quote that as, now we are falling in love, and it's such a beautiful journey, in that one 3-minute songs, you can see the journey of how love blossoms, and it was amazing to watch that.
And my God, the evening photography in that song, it goes from daytime to nighttime, right? Like they shoot these different singing sessions, like them doing riyaz, and you have that photography in broad daylight, and then you have this gorgeous twilight. Just thinking about it is giving me chills.
And it's probably the only song that's so beautiful, but also has a fart interlude in it. That's that doesn't happen. Which song has a fart interlude in it? I also thought rewatching Aankhon Ki Gustakhiyaan is so beautiful because there's no lip sync in it, right? Even that was shocking at that time. That they're not lip singing the song.
It is the rightful spiritual sequel or successor to Baho Ke Darmiyan. And this trumps that.
That's such a good song. That's such a good song. Yeah. Oh, they do actually bang in that song. Actually, I forgot.
No, they don't lip sync in Baho Ke Darmiyan either.
No, they do bang. I'm saying. I'm back on the banging, dude. I've not forgotten. There's a theme in my points here. Yeah. The two things I also love in that rewatching it was that sequence where Salman is mirroring Aishwarya. She's talking to her friends, and that's so cute. And the other scene is the two other moments is when Aishwarya is making faces behind her dad, and then the dad almost catches her, and she makes a face oh, I got caught, that is so beautiful, because that is the kind of acting that I could connect with Aishwarya in the songs. And the pugri tying fantasy she has for 30 seconds, it gets so steamy and hot, and it feels so voyeuristic, because it's happening in a wedding sequence where there's everybody around, and they're fantasizing this sequence that they can kullam kulla, get together. It's wow, it really hits you in the emotions. I have to say, the song that I fast forward, and you probably this is gonna be one of those gender divides here. Is Nimbura
Unacceptable. Unacceptable.
Why, Asim?
I have to ask you: is Nimbura about testicles or is it not about testicles?
Asim, do you want it to be about testicles? If you want it to be about testicles, it's about testicles.
I don't know, because you're talking about Aishwarya being unattainable and being in control, and she's like constantly making those sizes with her hands. It's like, is this about testicles? Like,
so in that way,
why am I uncomfortable?
In that way, the film's greatest neg is towards Salman, because kacha kacha chota chota,
Okay.
I thought you were complaining about Nimbura or fast forwarding it because it falls into that Bollywood trope of somebody singing about something specific, like Aishwarya is singing about her love and nobody in the party understands what she's singing about.
No, that one kaki understands. She knows. With the eyebrows, the one with the eyebrows always knows in every movie. Spot the Bhabhi with the auntie with the eyebrows. She knows what's up.
Hilde I don't like at all because I hate the family. I don't want to spend any time with them whatsoever. Also rewatching Dhola. Is it Dhola Re Dhola? Is that the one?
Dholi Taro.
No, sorry. Dholi Taro. No, my notes are wrong. I was saying that Dholi Taro really sets the template for, songs like Ghumar and Dhola Re Dhola. Like, I like, like how Bacha SLB became like, the grown-up annoying SLB we have now. And you see these kind of same things that he does in every movie. And you can really see the clear line, right, between that kind of song and this kind of song. I just thought it was nice to revisit. I even think like the set is quite similar in a way. Like this spin around the whole time.
Because he's speaking to a very specific aesthetic of Bollywood song or like Hindi cinema song. So it's not that he is trying to remake the same thing. It's that his stylistic inspirations are very specific and really strong.
And wherever you see Bollywood, it's Nitin Desai, right? So he is omnipresent. That's why you get that aesthetic of set design,
I think one of the important things to talk about also is the choreography, because I think like Bhansali really brought, choreography, that kind of choreography back to filmmaking. I think there are two key figures, and both of them were Vidhu Vinod Chopra assistants. One is Bhansali, one is Farah Khan, where choreography and, choreography became filmmaking in their films in a way that there hadn't been since the days of Vijayanand, right? Like the days of Hoto Pe Aisi Baat, right? Like, and you see that in Nimbura, you see that in Dholi Taro, that very, very carefully, meticulously choreographed dance moves. Because if you watch a lot of 90s and 80s movies, the backup dancers are doing, what, like the uncles and they're doing whatever they want. And then the lead dancers, they can dance, or maybe they can't dance, but in, Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, Aishwarya Rai is a trained dancer, and Devdas, Madhuri and Aishwarya both trained dancers. So he really, he backs them up with people who can dance, and there's not one step out of place. And it's a true musical in that sense, where everything is choreographed, the singing and the dancing and the mise en scène and mise en place are supposed to tell you these particular things about the characters, their emotions, where they are, like each move, each way that the actors and the backup dancers are formed and grouped throughout the scenes. So for that reason, it's awe-inspiring. With Nimbura, like the choreography, when we first watched it, it was awe-inspiring, in the era of Baba Meri Ye Jawani Mera Picha Na Chode and things like that. I think it was incredible to watch something that was plotted, almost, down to the nth degree, like every dancer in the back, Aishwarya in every scene, finding every spot, the hand and the feet landing in the same place every time, and I think she did the song with like swollen feet or something, which becomes like a recurring theme, injured dancers and actors performing through injuries for Bhansali. I think in Dola Re Dola she was performing with torn earlobes and things like that, wow. which is its own kind of, which is the kind of thing one used to glorify back in the day and now is looking sort of askance at, but that was that moment. I think that level of perfectionism in dancing coming back to Bollywood, I think can definitely be credited to Bhansali in this film and to, Farah Khan as well.
And also, it is still unusual, like even today, like after all these years of his filmmaking, it is unusual to see a film director who has very strong Hindi cinema influences in his work. And it's not like, it's not like the usual, like, let's do it for a gag kind of a thing, but like real strong stylistic influences.
Yep. And it's not just Sholay, I think for a lot of, I think, Gen X directors, they were looking towards the West, especially sitcoms. Like if you look at Karan Johar and Farhan Akhtar especially, you can see that sitcom hangover. But with Bhansali, the reference points are Vijay Anand. They are, things like, Navrang. They are Raj Kapoor. They are the Ek Radha, Ek Meera sequence from Ram Teri Ganga Maili. They are Ray, Mughal Azam, they are Pakiza, K. Asif, and even like Bengali directors and like Ray and Ghatak, right? Like that moment with the binoculars in Devdas. This is a purely homegrown Indian sensibility, that subsists on Indian cinema that's been fueled, an imagination that's been fueled by Indian cinema, which is why I think the films are also so compelling to me, as someone who's been fascinated with a lot of the same things, who looked at Pakiza with like Meena Kumari's hair in the water and was like, how is this possible, like who thinks of this? And he clearly reacted to it the same way. And also things like Jatra and Nautanki and theatre. And you see those reference points and inspirations writ large on his cinema. And do they always live up to those references? I don't know. But even the approximation of them and the synthesis of them can be very, very satisfying to watch.
And also, like, it's a joy as a cinephile to watch a movie made by a cinephile, especially a cinephile that's interested in the same kind of stuff that you are. Because every time I watch a Bhansali film, it doesn't matter if the film itself is good or if I like it or I hate it. I always engage with it. And then also, I want to go and watch more stuff. Like, I finished watching this film and I immediately wanted to go watch, like, Wo Saat Din, like, I'm like really looking forward to watching it again this weekend. And I'm listening to you talk and like suddenly I want to see Honton Pe Aisi Baat, like it's always like, it triggers your desire to immerse yourself further in this particular art form. And that's always a good thing.
Yeah. I think for me, it's, that Zoolander quote about Selby, I don't really like the music, but the fact he's making it, I respect it. I care desperately about it. I will always watch them and I'll always be annoyed more and more the further it goes along, and really get annoyed about the same thing that I've discussed now. And I'll probably I discussed in Khamoshi, and I probably will be doing in Devdas too when we get to it. But I also I think he's an amazingly talented person, so it's always interesting, even though, it's not always connecting with me. Any final thoughts, any final words, Sal, that you want to add about, Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam before we wrap it up?
It was very interesting watching it during the pandemic, because I just watched Maunaragam, which has a very similar plotline. And we talked about Mani Ratnam and Bhansali, being these key figures in Aishwarya Rai's character and also being similar in some of their interests. And it was interesting watching those two films taking the same story and treating them very, very differently. One very naturalistically and the other very, very theatrically. And I don't know if Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam does it completely successfully, but it's still a fascinating, fascinating artifact of its time.
Amrita, final words, final thoughts?
I'm really glad we did this, and I'm really glad that we did it with Sal.
Yeah, same here. Sujoy?
I had so many unrelated thoughts during this movie. I wrote some of them down. Some are not as funny.
Tell.
Some are. Stuff like I noticed how SLB uses the elements. There's wind, there's earth, fire, and water. In
this
the
fart.
This part, which
That's
is gas.
wind. That's wind.
That's wind, yeah.
I also noticed how Aishwarya totally upstaged the Dulhan in Aankhon Ki Gustaki.
Dulhan kaun hai? Kahan hai Dulhan?
Yeah. And poor Shiva Chadda, but she gets what she gets, I guess. I thought this was
Aishwarya basically pulled a Moira in Schitt's Creek. She comes down dressed like the Pope.
Yeah, pretty much. What else? And I also really appreciated SLB trying to. This is a 3-hour choreographed movie. There are bits like steps that repeat itself, like the eating of chilies. That when Salman gets upset for the first time, he eats chilies just to make a point, and Aishwarya does that after. The statue that begins as a prank and then gets repeated in Tadap Tadap, where Aishwarya comes to say goodbye to her lover and she can't move. All little things like that I really appreciated this time around. And also I wrote something really terrible, because this is how I watch movies now, that I amuse myself. When Aishwarya at the end of Aankhon Ki Gustaki, at the end of Aankhon Ki Gustaki, when Salman or Sameer is troubling Nandini, she accidentally slaps her, and then Nimbura happens and all of that, and Aishwarya tries to calm him down, and Sameer is really angrily walking on the balcony. I said to myself loudly in my living room all by myself, "Yeah, baby, root hua hai banchod." So those are my takes from Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam.
It weirdly reminded me, because Salman deserves more than one slap in that. Like, that whole idea of, masculinity being bruised is so... Yeah. It's so annoying, but it reminded me immediately of Devdas when he hits Aishwarya on the head with the thing and scars her face. It was just kind of like an interesting thing how love becomes poisonous and toxic very quickly if in the power of the wrong men. Because nobody Devdas is as hard as Desi men in general, right?
There's one another random thing that popped up this time around, and that was on the Suhagrat scene when Aishwarya is getting confronted by Ajay Devgan, Vanraj, right? And he says his throwaway line, "Khamoshi se kuch hasil nahi hoga," and I thought that was a dig at SLB.
At his own movie?
Yeah, possibly.
I just want to know who serves frutti di mare with chilies, though, with Indian chilies. Like, which restaurant does that?
I don't know.
I just imagine confused Indian tourists going to Europe and being like, "Where is the frutti di mare?"
It's Italy and Budapest, so it's chilies with Italian food. It's Sanjay Leela Bhansali invented fusion, basically.
Oh God. Well, I think let's wrap it up, because I think for the people, we had a lot of people requesting we cover Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, and I think we've done it justice. I think we can keep talking about this movie because there's still a lot of things to talk about, a lot of points to hit that I wanted to, but I mean, there's a limit. And like Amrita said, I'm so happy, Sal, you were on this episode, that you could, provide a bit more context to the parts that I don't understand about myself. I also am really, really happy that I'm not the person that I was when this movie came out. Like, this is kind of my final thought about it, because I'm so happy I've grown. I'm not turn up anymore. And it's funny because this movie is so connected with my own heartbreak at that time. I think I broke up with a girlfriend at that time, and the funny part is I don't remember which girlfriend I broke up with, but I remember the pain of this movie. So I'm so happy I'm over that pain and I'm over that period in my life. This was a good place to revisit Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam. I was so happy, Sal, you provided the context of me maybe one day understanding Aishwarya as a performer. Sal, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Sal and the Bad Pun. And thank you so much for having me. I had such a great time.
We have to get you back on. Amrita, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at AmritaIQ or on my YouTube channel, Amrita by the Book. And also, I will be appearing on the fabulous podcast called Fuckboys of Literature to discuss R.K. Narayanan's The Guide. So you should keep an eye out for that.
Nice. Sujoy, tu ka hai?
मैं Instagram पे हूँ भाई. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at 93k, and you can follow the Khandaan Podcast Instagram at Khandaan Podcast.
Drop us an email at youpodcasting@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Asim Bernie. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love hearing from you. It helps new people find us, which is always great. Because if you don't leave reviews and you don't let us know that you love us and obsess about us, we're going to stop podcasting. So I'm putting it down here, let us know. We need validation. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back again with a new episode very soon.
They say if you love something, set it free. At LifeLock, we say, that's bull hockey. All that saving up and paying off debt just for some identity thief to set it free? Crazy talk. It can be dangerously easy to steal your identity. LifeLock by Norton makes it easy to help protect yourself. If you become a victim, we'll work to fix it. No one can monitor all transactions, but everyone can save up to 25% off their first year at LifeLock.com/aware. Identity theft protection starts here.